Parents, when did you realize it wasn't just teenage hormones? Your kid was just a bad person. My parents are realizing what I've known about my sister for years now. She's on the hook for $60K in student loans and such, after failing out of 2 colleges for rampant drinking, and refuses to do so much as her exit counseling for them. Parents have co-signed everything, and Mum says that every call she makes there ends in shouting because it's screwing up their credit. Because she lives a couple of states away from them now, she thinks she can get away with it. Mum says they're thinking of taking her to court over it. My sister was in this situation a few years ago. I fully sympathize with you and your family. In the end, we threatened to take her to court over the damages she caused to the household and credit, and it scared her into behaving. In the end, however, she nearly ended up in prison, did community service, moved to a different country. I saw her for the first time in years a couple of months ago, and she's finally grown up. She's now 28. Finally. My dad makes a good living that allows my mum to be a stay-at-home mum. As a stay-at-home mum, my mum's only real job is to be the maternal figure of the house. Needless to say, she goes all out. Well, in elementary school, my mum would pack me and my brother extravagant bag lunches, amazing sandwiches with all the cookies and chips any middle schooler would love. One day, my mum started to notice that my little brother was coming home super hungry after school and that he had eaten all of his lunch, yet he was still dying of hunger every day at 3 o'clock when he would walk through the door. My mum asked him why he was so hungry, and she suspected he was getting bullied and his food was getting taken by some of the older kids at school. He's pretty small. Well, since he didn't say anything, my mum called his teacher and had her look out for him. My mum got a startling call not more than a week after her inquiry. My younger brother was gathering the fat, poor, hungry kids who didn't have money or were still hungry for food and was putting on a hunger talent show. He would make the fat kids dance for his food and the poor kids do weird jackass-like stunts for it. When my mum heard, she was devastated. She had spawned a real little butthole. Years later, he's a successful lawyer with a beautiful family, but still a fricking butthole. Your brother is President Snow? At first, I thought this was going to be a story of him donating his lunch to the less fortunate and was wondering how that made him into a butthole. My brain had trouble fathoming the depravity of the reality of this story. That he turned out to be a lawyer is no surprise. When he was 3 years old, I was napping on the couch when he came up, opened a bottle of water I had next to me, poured it on my crotch, and asked me why I'd peed myself. I mean, that's definitely not teenage hormones. Given that I anticipate a lot of tragic stories of broken families, toxic relationships, and general depressing content in this thread, I thought I should include this monster who soaked their parents' crotch. I'm sure there's like a 50-50 shot that they aren't the devil reincarnated. When my mum called me asking if I could track down my sister's baby because she had abandoned it. My sister has 5 kids, 2 were with their father, but she had the other 3 with other people. My mum got a call from the twins' babysitter saying she hadn't heard from my sister in a few days, and was wondering when my sister would be coming to pick her kids up. My mum called around and no one could find my sister or the baby. So she went to pick up the twins and their babysitter suggested that the baby might be with a woman whose name she could only partially remember, but who she'd heard was babysitting the baby from time to time. So my mum frantically called me asking if I could use the magic of the internet to track this lady down. I used online yellow pages, Facebook connections, and just cold calling a lot of the people asking, "Do you have a baby?" I finally got a hold of the right person who said, "I was just about to call the cops. I thought I was going to be babysitting for a few hours and it's been 2 days. My mum went and picked him up, and my sister hadn't even dropped off any clothes with him. In conclusion, my sister basically just said, "This is too much pressure for me," arranged for babysitters for the 3 kids, and left town. My mother was convinced at that moment that she had raised a sociopath. My mum forced her to have her tubes tied, and then won the custody of the baby, and the babysitter of the twins became their foster parents and will probably ultimately adopt them. My sister got remarried and joined the army. We're all just waiting for her to either get kicked out, start cheating on the new guy, or whatever. My grandson is in kindergarten. Last week he threw his lunchbox at his teacher because he wanted to see what would happen. Journal entry for March 1st, 2013. Week-long detention hypothesis confirmed. As I discussed last week, I hypothesized that throwing a lunchbox at my teacher's skull would result in at least a week detention. Not only was that confirmed, but I was also grounded at home. I suspect the adults have some sort of reason to prevent injury, an odd custom. I propose that other weapons beside a lunchbox would elicit a similar response. Regardless, this was a small sample size. I plan on recruiting other children in other classes to test this hypothesis. Of course, we will need to double-blind these experiments as well. Next week, I will try a knife. I did similar stuff as a young child. I'd throw crap at people or hit people to get a reaction, but that all changed when I threw a snowball at a bigger kid who proceeded to shove my face in a snow mound. I was 5. He was also 5, but bigger. When my cousin slapped our grandmother, for no reason. For those wondering, this cousin is male. Also, I wasn't there to witness it, but family members referenced it. His apparent reason was, she was bugging me. That's not much of a reason to me, so I just say he's being a butthole. He's my fiance's kid, but he lives with us, and I deal with him 80% of the time. I knew shortly after I met him 2 years ago what a butthole he is. He's constantly lying about stupid crap. He is entirely self-absorbed, he screams and rages over the dumbest stuff, and threatens to take his own life if you try to make him do the dishes. He got expelled from school for threatening to shiv a kid with a broken pair of scissors because that kid asked him a question. He then proceeded to tell us that the principal was a lying B-word and that she and all the other children at school were trying to frame him. As far as he's concerned, the entire world is out to get him, and everyone else is fricked up, and if you call him on his crappy behavior, he threatens to take his own life. Take yours, or call the cops to frame you for inappropriate behavior with a minor. He's a butthole to the extreme, and no one really wants anything to do with him because of it. We've had therapists that have literally refused to see him again after only 1 or 2 sessions. He's 12. My son, who was 25 at the time, blamed me for his unemployment because I spent too much money on him when he was a child. My older sister cheats on her husband constantly, is rude as frick at almost all times, and has been this way for her entire life. My mother still refuses to acknowledge that she's a legitimate butthole and always has been. Does her husband know? If not, are you considering telling him? I should have clarified, the husband knows. He knows everything. It's a strange situation. My sister is a user. She spent months, years back on MySpace, looking for a husband. Basically, she used her time to look for someone to take care of her. She's always been very manipulative and sort of the black sheep of our family. Anyway, she wrangled herself an Air Force guy. My sister is an attractive lady, but her husband is most definitely not a good-looking guy, and I'm positive that she's used this as an angle of sorts to keep this ruse going. She doesn't do crap, but spends his money and cheats on him. And because he's too much of an insecure pansy, he won't take charge and leave her. Worst part of all is now there's a gosh darn child involved. Fricking A. I don't know if my 13-year-old is a butthole just yet, but last week he was suspended for running up to a kid at school who wasn't looking and smacked him across the face super hard, while he was videotaping it with his phone, no less, and then uploaded it to Vine and Twitter. And then he said he was just joking around. I'm also starting to think he's a little dumb because we live in Steubenville, Ohio, and if there's one thing the kids there should have learned, it's that you get in a ton of trouble for doing illegal things involving social media. That was a trend in the UK about 5 years ago, except it was called happy slapping. Sometimes the best love is tough love. If you keep giving him the benefit of the doubt, he can get away with it and will continue to do that in the future. My little brother is a butthole and my parents know it, and to keep him from having a fit, spoil him all the time. Fit as in foot stomping, blood-curdling screams, cursing, etc. He's 13. I despise him greatly. The narrator is hoping for the sake of these families that just for the general spoilt behavior, 13 is still a little too young to judge whether the kid is a lost cause yet. I say this specifically because there seem to be a lot of 13-year-olds in these stories. Case in point, I have a 13-year-old grandson that we moved 750 miles to help raise because our daughter passed away. At first we thought he was just having a hard time coping, as we all were, but lately the non-appreciative attitude and the you owe me attitude has been very loud and disrespectful. No matter what he gets or doesn't get, it's never enough. His demands are not those of a normal child. We raised 4 and assisted some with all the grandkids. He speaks to us like he's grown and never gets quiet or even attempts to show respect and listen to what we have to say. 13 and wondering every day. I'm a teacher who works with middle schoolers every day. Remind them that the only thing they're entitled to is the air they breathe and maybe some food to keep them alive, and clothing to keep their body temperature from lowering below 98 degrees. And if he acts like a butthole, take away everything except for the essentials. Kids who think they're owed everything grow up to be adults to think the same way. Not so cute when you're 30 with the maturity of a 7th grader. And if you do this, be very matter-of-fact about it. Not angry. They sense anger as weakness and try to push your buttons. Be calm as though you're talking about the weather, and no matter what, follow through. The one time you don't will be your downfall. My stepson has autism, which makes it tricky because sometimes autism can look like behaving like a butthole in certain circumstances where social skills are a challenge for them. But the truth is that people with autism have good personalities or bad personalities, just like anyone, and my stepson is a butthole. He's a selfish bully who looks for victims. He takes his anger out only on people who cannot or will not fight back. He has fantasies about violence with children smaller than him. He's come after me with a butcher knife. On and on. He's a lot like his biological dad, who lost custody of his kids because he slugged his little girl and threatened to take his wife's life. He's an administrator at a Christian college, by the way. My stepson is out of the house and in a home group now. I really loved him. I tried so hard to help him. We got so much professional help, and yet he is who he is. Good parenting can do a lot, bad parenting can too, but in the end you just are who you are. Any changes that can be made need to come from you. Nobody can do it for you. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. My son is only 10 and is in no way a butthole, but my father had 7 kids. I remember him saying, "You have until the age of 12 to teach your kids. After that, they become buttholes for the next 10 years. This thread is making me love birth control even more than I already did. My wife and I are still hoping it's the hormones and not his lifelong personality. When I was in high school, I was showing my mum a few signatures in my yearbook. There was one signature that I had gotten as a joke. The guy was not popular or attractive, followed me around like a puppy, had gross habits. I was telling my mum about the guy and was laughing about getting him to sign my yearbook. My dad overheard all of this and said, "You're a fricking jerk butthole, girl. You're the butthole girl who everyone secretly hates. Frick you for treating that guy like that. That's really something to be proud of, you jerk." I felt guilty about my actions toward the guy ever since. As an adult, I go out of my way to not do the popular thing and to not follow others, to not treat people differently. I was trying to be popular that time in high school by treating someone like scum, and my dad changed my entire outlook on life by pointing it out and by yelling at me that evening. I don't have kids, so I thought I'd point out the moment when I was the jerk. I was actually in the reverse of the situation, realizing that my parent was a legitimate butt. I was bullied in school quite a bit as a kid. During that time, I wasn't living with my parents, I was living with my grandparents. When I moved back in with my mother, I realized how differently she acted behind closed doors than I was used to. Emotional bullying, PMDD, anger management issues, hormonal imbalance. I started to ask about her childhood. She told me stories about how she and her best friend would terrorize people and bully other girls in school. In one example, leaving dog crap in a birthday gift box at the foot of a girl they particularly liked to torment, until she eventually transferred. She had a few stories like that she would tell with a laugh like they were totally normal and hilarious. In conclusion, my mum is the answer to the question, what becomes of the childhood bully? My friend is one of these legitimate buttholes. His parents are very nice people. I get on great with them. The problem lies that they were very fortunate in life with money and never put their foot down with my friend. He always got his own way. If he wanted something, he got it. He refused to go to university, but his parents really wanted him to. He then went to uni on the basis that they would pay for a year's travel expenses for him. A term into uni, he got his parents to buy him a car, otherwise he would drop out. I put friend at the top because he's actually a really nice guy up until his teenage years. It was around this time that his dad's business rocketed. My other friend and I are only friends with him because sometimes he can still be nice. We give him crap about being horrible to his parents though, and he doesn't take it on board. Maybe the combination of his puberty hormones and parents' wealth happening at the same time wasn't a good thing for him. We all have that friend who transforms into a flowering prick overnight. What's worse is that they go on to live successful lives, until they crash and burn at 33 because they have no real friends. My mum's just figured this out with my little brother. He's 18 and just moved to uni. Me and him haven't gotten along for a long time. My mum has defended him for years, claiming he's just fiercely independent and enjoys his privacy, but I've considered the behavior obnoxious for a long time. If you ask about how he is, he flips out because it's not your business. If you have a conversation and he disagrees with you with something, he will not respond to any evidence that supports you and will belittle and patronize. Yeah, sure it is. Oh yeah, right. But that's just how he is. He has zero empathy. If something is going wrong in someone's life, he becomes Mr. Hindsight, absolutely emotionless and again, condescending and belittling. There is no such thing as opinion or grey areas in his world. If he's seen someone's life go to crap through green herb use, then all green herb use is terrible and the medical Mary J idea is bullcrap. If he likes a band, they're good, and if you disagree, not only are you wrong, but you're a little piece of crap he's found on his carpet. But he just can't communicate very well. He doesn't really mean what he's saying. Try and listen better. So he went to uni and hasn't called my mum except to ask her for help moving from one room to another. She is obviously worried. He's the baby and now her and dad have an empty nest and she misses him. So she texts and emails at most once a day, just asking, "How are you?" rather than calls. She doesn't want to disturb him. She doesn't get replies usually, but then she's got this horrible email back. "Stop trying to invade my life. You're not involved anymore. It's none of your business. Just leave me alone." I think she's realized that it may just be how he is. But how he is a butthole. She's still trying to defend him a little, but when I talk to her, it's easy to hear the hurt in her voice. She's always been there for this little brat, much to my annoyance, as she's always sided with him in arguments. "I know he's yelled at you for the last 30 minutes, but did you ask him how school was?" But hearing her this upset is awful. I think she's always hoped that once he got more independence, he'd relax a bit. He always felt trapped in our hometown, but it's gone the other way. I honestly don't think he has any intention of being part of the family again. He's previously told me that if I or he ever have kids, they're probably not going to meet each other, and that looking after my parents is probably going to be my responsibility. I don't overly mind, but I know it's going to kill my mum. Yeah, I knew that there would be a lot of sad stories like this when I picked the story group, and here is maybe our most detailed example. Heartbreaking. I have a son who I thought was a butthole from a very early age. He could give you a look at age 2 that made you deep down want to punt him like a football. Like it triggered some old, deep part of the brain that we don't use anymore and actually made you angry just by this look he'd give you. After a while, it no longer bothered me. I figured he was just born a butthole. Then at age 6, after many specialists and tests, he was diagnosed with Asperger's. With proper treatment and understanding, he's now only casually a butthole, but getting better. I started reading this out of curiosity. Funny how so many are not from parents, but from siblings and other relatives. My cousin supposedly locked herself in the bathroom after an argument with my uncle, called the cops and claimed that he, along with my aunt, were being physically inappropriate. She asked to be removed from the home and she was moved into a foster family. She still came to all family holidays and insisted on sleeping in my room. I have a trundle bed, so a spare bed underneath my bed, and she would wait until I left the room and would steal from me. On 2 separate occasions, my MP3 player and my Game Boy Color, along with all the games, were stolen. She lived 4 hours away, so when my aunt eventually found them, I had to wait for them to be mailed back to me. She was a proclaimed animal activist and vegetarian. Only when it was convenient to her, though. I've been a vegetarian for 9 years and we always had veggie food in our house. She was always just an awful person. I've been planning my wedding for almost a year now. She got engaged and within a month, she stole my future wedding date. Seeing a lot of the stories here, I'm recognizing myself at that age and I feel like it's worth reassuring the parents in this thread that it may not always be like that. Looking back, there are so many things I did in middle school and high school that I really regret and that I feel terrible about now. I could have easily been considered a butthole, I think. I'm now in my 4th year of university and I consider myself to be a much better person than I was back then. I know that I caused my parents a lot of grief then, but seeing how things between us have gotten better makes me happy. So you shouldn't give up hope at such an early age. Sometimes all it takes is for your kid to grow up and earn some experience in the real world. I saw the exact moment on my uncle's face when he realized his son was a butthole. He had been getting into trouble, little chicken crap stuff, then he gets busted for statutory. So my uncle, who used to be a police officer, calls in every favor he can to get the charges dropped. He hated what his son did, but it was his son and still felt he had to look out for him. Then, the very night his charges are dropped, the moron goes out and gets arrested again for the same crime. No help the second time. Now he deals blackjack at a casino and has a gambling problem. The tragedy is, he used to have so much potential. My parents told me that I was a crappy kid my whole life. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was able to reflect on this and realize they were just narcissistic buttholes who don't like children. My dad used to tell me I was the most selfish person he knew. I did the family laundry, cooked the meals, cleaned, got all A's in school, and never did drinking or substances. Sorry I sometimes needed time alone. I realized my younger brother was a butthole when he was 3 years old. He had been hitting, biting, kicking, and generally bullying my 2-year-old brother, and my dad's response was, "Boys will be boys." Anyway, my 3-year-old brother was mad at the youngest for some reason. He pushed the baby onto the tile floor and proceeded to take violent action against him. Needless to say, the baby was rushed to the ER, where my dad claimed the baby had just fallen over. This sort of abuse is still happening. They're 15 and 16 now. The only difference is my dad tells the oldest not to leave marks because CPS has been called multiple times throughout their childhood. One time I caught the oldest trying to engage in inappropriate behavior with the other, and I was so angry I beat the crap out of him. I told my family and was going to call the cops, but they informed me if I called the cops, I was dead to them. The butthole is the golden boy and can do no wrong. He's the spitting image of my psychotic father. I thought my 13-year-old was up to some crap. A couple of days ago, I saw him unlock his phone. He went to practice and I gave in to curiosity. He's actually a really nice and cool nerd. I figured I was already a crappy parent for looking, so I browsed it all. Texts, Facebook, and Instagram. It was all chatter about sports, video games, and horse masks. His pics were of his siblings and passed away grandmother. I felt horrible for not trusting him. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.